Board of Examiners come to order.
Thank you, Governor. And for the record, we have all three members here, Governor, Attorney General, and Secretary of State. For our consent agenda for today, we have the minutes from last month is item number 1, and then item number 2 is from the Department of Administration, Division of Purchasing. This is a request for assignment of a contract from Harris CPAs to Soren CPAs. And the Department of Commerce is the primary using agency relying on these services. And so with that, board members, is our consent agenda for today.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed nay. The ayes have it. Consent agenda has been adopted.
Thank you, Governor, members of the board. On our informational agenda, we have one item from the State Insurance Fund, and that concludes our agenda for today.
And I move we adjourn.
Great motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Board of Land Commissioners will come to order. Mr. Director.
All right, Governor.
I asked the director this morning if he'd rather do the land board or JFAC, and prudently he said the land board.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the governor, that wasn't a trick question, was it? Well, good morning, Governor, land board members. This is a regular meeting of the State Board of Land Commissioners for Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. So we'll jump right into the timber sales update. As you can see, the department sold 2 endowment timber sales at auction in January, and both of those sales saw competitive bidding to the tune of about a 29% up bid. One of those sales was a delivered product sale. The average price for these sales combined was $447 a thousand. The department also sold a sale for the Idaho Department of Parks and Recreation in January as well, and that was up at Farragut State Park. On the next table, you can see the
Governor,
department.
For a quick question, and maybe just an opportunity for the director to remind us all what a delivered sale is and help explain that a little bit.
So I'll start, and then if Jim needs to back me up, I'll let him do that. So under the delivered product sale model, it's the landowner that takes the responsibility for the contracting work and working with the loggers to harvest the various products and deliver those products. So we're talking like pulp, post and pole, saw logs, cedar poles, house logs, for example, and they sell those directly to the end user, which is oftentimes a mill, log home buyer, cedar pole manufacturer. So using this model, the seller gets paid a stumpage price plus the margin that would otherwise go to the logger. And so it's also a way for the endowments to generate some additional revenue. So I don't remember how many of these delivered product sales we've done. Jim, I don't know if you know that answer. 4? All right, thank you. But we've gained some experience, and we hope to continue to utilize this program.
Very good. Thank you.
So, okay, Governor, land board members, on the next table, you can see the department is offering 8 sales and about 25 million board feet of volume for auction during the month of February, valued at $5.1 million. A few of those sales are salvage sales resulting from the recent wind event in North Idaho. I'll speak about in a little bit. And I was just told from operations that all 3 of those sales did sell, and we did see some upbidding there. Current volume under contract on the next table is 447 million board feet and 136 active contracts valued at $147.6 million. And on the next table on page 2, thus far this fiscal year, we've generated $55 million in timber receipts, with about 7.8 million in receipts expected by the end of February. Onto the FY26 timber sale program, 205 million board feet of volume is either sold or in process. And so we're 62% of the way through the current sales plan, and also 95% of the way to our cedar pole target. On the graphs on the bottom of page 2 and top of page 3, you can see we are sitting at 94% of the 3-year average for cumulative harvest receipts and 84% of the 3-year average for volume harvested. The main reason for that is that many contractors are not currently operating in the woods due to the ongoing mild winter and wet logging roads. And that's certainly reflected there on the graph. And We'd love to see a cool down and a bunch of precipitation in the form of snow. We're getting some of that this week, but we really are bumping up against our normal spring breakup window. So pray for moisture and cold temperatures, Governor. If we move down to the graph on page 4, you can see that the market is tracking very similar to the last several months. Not a lot of new information to share with you, but the endowment sales are doing well. They continue to do well, and you can see our stumpage average price remains ahead of where we were a year ago. Moving on to page 4, the December wind damage. As the board is aware, a December 17th, 2025 windstorm caused significant timber blowdown across North Idaho and the inland Northwest. We saw peak wind gusts reaching 91 miles per hour in higher elevations and widespread damage from the Clearwater region to the Panhandle. Approximately 21 million board feet of endowment timber volume is estimated to require salvage as a result. The table in the center of the page depicts the estimated loss of value and the estimated salvage value to the endowments of that 21 million board feet. And you can see we are sitting at about an 18% loss on the damaged timber as compared to the green sales. And what I'm told is that the trees are still good. This is much different than seeing the damage and the impact from wildfire or bug kill. It's just that there is a little bit less volume because you saw a lot of the trees kind of snap off in certain locations. So just less volume available through the salvage program. And I'll let Jim jump up here and correct me if I'm wrong. He's not even looking at me, so I think we're good. Ideal foresters have prioritized the expedited salvage logging operations using active timber contracts, direct sales, and salvage sales. Like I said, unlike wildfire and insect damage, wind damage timber retains most of its value since trees remain green. To date, about 8.9 million board feet of volume, about 40% of the projected salvage volume has been approved for sale in February. As I mentioned, those sales did sell. And IDL is working to minimize the financial impacts to protect the endowments through proactive management and accelerated planning efforts. So I'm proud of the work that our foresters did to put up those salvage sales. And generally speaking, you've seen the speed at which our folks move when it comes to trying to recoup the value of damaged timber. So really pleased to see the results there. So Governor, I'll stop and answer any questions.
Director, I assume the wind didn't just blow on state land. Private timber and Forest Service timber, this is a classic shared stewardship where we get together and try and maximize the opportunity for us because it's important we get that stuff out of the woods before the bugs get in it. Are your foresters talking to the private land foresters and the Forest Service to try and make it more efficient to get so that I mean the whole concept of shared stewardship is that what's good for the state is and it's also makes more efficient for our logging contractors to go in and then having mill capacity. The nice thing about wind versus fire is that's available for pulp. So it should significantly increase the pulp supply. There shouldn't be a problem with pulp being available. And it's pretty close to that nice pulp mill we have in Idaho. Is there anything we need to do, the board, or we need to do with our federal partners to move this along?
Governor, thank you for the question. And certainly you're right. The damage was not just limited to IDL, certainly damage on the private, the industrial, and the Forest Service lands. I don't have the figures in front of me on what that damage amounted to, but our G&A foresters, for example, work with the Forest Service on those salvage sales. We did fire salvage this summer. We've done a lot of fire salvage through the G&A program with the Forest Service in the past, and I can get some of those numbers. And we do have Clete Edmondson here. I don't know if Clete, if you've heard of any, the extent of the damage on the industrial timberlands. But
Well, it's pretty expensive. I haven't heard the exact number. Working on it. Well, as soon as possible, but I really think you're right.
Mhm.
If we do any DNA cell, so let's keep it small. I think our industrial private landowners got that under control. We're worried about the small landowners. They're gonna need our help. We don't have enough to make them any money and
Maybe, maybe the NRCS could help with some private timber funding so we can get that off. I know I did, one of the issues going to be access roads to get in and out of those. And if we need to do something to take some of those encumbrances out of the way, because it looks like it's going to be not a great, because we don't have any snowpack. That big stuff's going to get dry pretty fast. And I guess I would just suggest, and you're probably already doing this, is that we get everybody together so that if we can point out where there's a problem, we can try and expedite that. One thing about it, the Forest Service is going to be a lot easier to work with than they have in the past.
Yeah. And Governor, we'll certainly work with Julia and her team in the GNA program to understand the extent of the damage and where GNA can play a role there. And obviously, our private forestry specialists, they work with private landowners, and so we can kind of get an idea of what the extent of the damage is there on the private land and see what we can do to help.
Jody?
Governor Director, I do know that the forester I work for IFG, the Forest Service have gotten in contact with them, gone over a bunch of the sales that we've done, just keep Joe and assess the blowdown damage.
Governor, real quick, for the people who are listening online.
Jody,
if
you
we-
want to come up
yeah.
to the microphone and introduce yourself? We'll have it. We'll have it officially in the record, and then whatever you say will be used against you in a court of law.
All right. Jody Hendricks, I represent Hendricks Logging in out of St. Mary's, and I also sit on the ALC executive board as vice president. And I log for IFG as a core contractor. So the forester I've dealt with has met with Forest Services, met with them, flown over a bunch of the stuff just east of Choco. There's quite a bit of pretty good sized timber sales that we're under contract that are done. Assessing the blowdown and getting with Forest Service, getting with IFG to see about going back and picking up all the blowdown there. So I do know that is in the works there. So I just want to.
Very good. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
And Governor, just to add, the Forest Service can use some emergency authorities. In fact, I know the Trump administration is prioritizing that. You've seen that through many of the executive orders and secretarial orders that have come through. So I think that the tools and the desire are in place to get the work done, and we'll play a role where we can.
Excellent.
Okay, Governor, I'll move quickly on to attachment B, endowment transactions, including leases, permits, and real estate transactions. The department issued one land use permit in January and granted one deed following the surplus disposition of the Payette Readiness Center. The department sold the property in January for the Idaho Military Division for $810,000, and I believe that property was sold to a local church in the area. On to page 2, in leasing revenue, you can see that we are about $1 million ahead of projections as of the end of January. This was influenced by a number of things that I've discussed in the past, but we're tracking right along there, and it's nice to see some additional income in there. On the graph on page 3, you can see we're tracking ahead of the 3-year average at $5.5 million in leasing revenue. And on to the permanent fund revenue and royalties on page 4, more than $2 million in revenue has been deposited into the permanent fund since July 1st. Governor and Land Board members, I can stop there for questions.
Questions? Continue.
Okay, Governor, attachment C is your quarterly land bank aging report. As you can see with interest, the land bank has a total of nearly $84 million. The department is always looking at possible land transactions to complete using land bank funds. And we do have about 15,000 acres identified in the acquisition pipeline report. And I know that's been emailed out to the land board staff. However, land values remain high. You'll be hearing in a little bit about a conservation easement where those high values are really reflected in that. So the department is evaluating those possible acquisitions ahead of the next round of funds expiring in FY27.
Very good.
So Governor, on to attachment D. This is your current legislative summary. We do have 3 rule dockets up today and tomorrow in committee. You can see listed there. Rules governing mine land and reclamation, rules for the regulation of beds, water, and airspace over navigable lakes in Idaho, and then easements on state-owned lands. Dropping down to the bottom of page 1, EFIB and IDL went before JFAC yesterday for our hearings. It's not fair that Mr. Antone did not have any questions and he yielded the rest of his time to me. And I guess I took every bit of it. The committee was full of questions, but got through that just fine. Turning on to page 2, House Bill 511, private forest land. Again, this is the legislation supported by the land board that amends existing statute to revise a surcharge associated with improved forest land. This is that structure surcharge, and it passed the House 46-22 with 2 absent. There is an Idaho Code cleanup bill that we're tracking. This bill repeals 30 sections of Idaho Code, including one in Title 38 pertaining to the Idaho Department of Lands and floating timber and town site claims. I don't know a whole lot about that, but that was part of the cleanup. And then dropping down to other legislation that's been introduced, being monitored. Of course, there's 3 constitutional amendments out there right now aimed at amending Section 8, Article 9 of the Idaho Constitution, and those are bills we're tracking right now.
Governor. Director, on the constitutional amendments, have you been engaged with the sponsors on these amendments?
Yeah, Governor and Mr. Secretary, we have. Senator Adams announced his proposed amendments, his proposed constitutional amendment last fall. We weighed in with some comments, and we sent them to him. We've also have had conversations with Representative Raybould on the House side on her proposed amendment. We didn't see that until early January, but we did provide. We have provided some insight to that particular bill, and we've been talking with industry partners and others about some of our thoughts regarding those amendments.
Do you happen to know, it looks like, so as we're meeting, House State Affairs is also taking up a potential amendment. Are you familiar with what that? I'm not, so are you familiar with what might be in that amendment?
Governor and Mr. Secretary, I am, and I think what's being done there is on Representative Raybould's amended, I guess it would be amended, or maybe it's a new bill, I guess, if to be a new bill. Her public lands amendment, I think she's really highlighting the priority going to revenue generating activities for the endowments. And certainly that bill adds the public as sort of a de facto beneficiary as well. And so what I do understand, and I did have a conversation with Representative Raybould last week, is that she is really trying to highlight the importance of the revenue generation piece for the endowment beneficiaries and making that a priority in her constitutional amendment.
I guess as a I presume it still has restrictions in terms of the ability to sell or dispose of public land. Is that right? Because isn't that kind of her overarching goal?
Yeah, Governor and Mr. Secretary, I believe that is. It's been the land board's prerogative and authority to dispose of lands that are underperforming. with the idea that we could put that money to use for the endowments, whether it's in acquisitions of new properties or moving that money down to EFIB for investments with the financial instruments. The authority to trade or sell land still resides with the land board, according to that's not really changed from what I understand in Representative Raybould's amendment. But the priority goes to revenue generation first, public access and opportunity second. From what we've gathered in that amendment, I think one of the things to point out, and that we have pointed out to a lot of folks, is while the board has disposed of property over the last 10 years, about maybe 800 acres have been sold by the land board. We have purchased more than 54,000 acres in that same time frame of good productive timberlands, working timberlands in the northern part of the state. That's good for the industry. It's good for the endowments. Those are lands that many of those acres did not have a public access component because they were in private ownership. Now they do, because of the land board's policy and priority to ensure that we are providing public access on endowment lands. So we're tracking these bills very closely, Mr. Secretary.
Well, and I guess as another follow-up is I've had just a little bit, but I'm wondering, have you heard from industry partners trying to figure out where the department's at, where the board's at?
Yeah, Governor and Mr. Secretary, we have heard from industry partners, and I think there are concerns out there. And we have been working with the land board staff on more or less a memo or a white paper that really just lays out our obligations as trust land managers and the board as the trustee, the revenue generation piece, the public access piece that remains a priority, and the other factor here is the Idaho Admissions Act clearly lays out the endowment beneficiaries and lay them out at statehood. I think there is a bit of a conflict there, just from what I've seen, between these constitutional amendments and the clear language of the Idaho Admissions Act.
Director, I read the fiscal note, which is what Brad does all the time. But the requirement in the two of the proposals that I've seen, and I haven't analyzed the new one, requires us to basically have different pools. One of them says it's statehood, and the lands that were acquired at statehood, and then there's in lieu lands and other lands that came in, and it would be, I think, beneficial to the legislature to know what the administrative costs of, because you're going to have basically the map of all the blue spots in the state, and then some of the blue spots are going to be managed one way and some of them are going to be managed another way, and the administrative challenges there about what was that statehood, what was subsequent to that versus in lieu lands, and then all the massive land exchanges. I mean, part of the reasons we only got 2.5 million when we started with 3.5 is we got rid of all those isolated parcels in the wilderness area. You look at the map of Idaho now compared to what it was at statehood, which we got at the last land board meeting, was very helpful. But the bookkeeping and also the mineral rights, because as we saw earlier in the packet, we've got 2.5 million acres of, I'll use fee land, where we own the entire bundle of sticks, and we got another 1 million acres. We have the mineral rights, and it's going to complicate administration. If you've got a section of land and there's 80 acres of it that was acquired at a different time, does that mean a timber sale, a grazing lease, a fill in the blank is going to be different on the 80 acres versus the other 560 acres of land that's in there? And the complications that's going to be. And when they say the fiscal note is $300,000 to print the bill, the fiscal note's going to be a lot greater. And I think we need to, and I'm certain that the bulk of the legislature doesn't understand how complicated it is if we manage them differently. And I think it would be helpful for us, for the land board, and also for the legislature to understand the magnitude of that cost going forward. So.
And Governor and land board members, we have engaged with a lot of members just explaining the endowment mission and some of the challenges we do see with these pieces of legislation. And you're right. I think in the Senate version, Governor, any new lands that would be granted by the federal government to the state would be managed under a different rule set. The income through the management of the natural resources on those new lands would be used to manage then those properties, but there would be, you know, they would be Idaho public lands, and the public would be involved in a lot of those conversations. The concern there is, and the question is it expected that our endowment land managers would then be managing these non-endowment lands, and with what funds? So it creates a separate trust, and it creates some complexity there that I think would be difficult for us to navigate.
Including the dedicated funds that come out of it for administration and for firefighting and for this is an accountant full employment act. Not that there's anything wrong with employing accountants.
Governor, I think just to follow up on your comments, Director, so much of this seems to stem from this summer when Utah Senator Mike Lee introduced the idea of the transfer of lands. And so there seems to be this strong reaction. And I guess as we move forward, not just on these specific proposals, but broadly, it does seem like industry partners are looking for some direction from where we stand, in part because I think this conversation is going to continue. Idaho's unique in its scope of public lands, especially compared to, you know, states east of us. And so I think it's important we continue to have these conversations, both asserting what our role is, maintaining the trust and the protecting the beneficiaries, but also just the bigger discussion. Because I think what all the points that the governor raises are very valid in terms of, it's not just the full Accountant Employment Act, it's firefighter. I mean, there's a list of people that come with managing such large swaths of land, and I guess us being prepared for how we pivot if anything ever does change.
Yes, and Governor, Mr. Secretary, I appreciate that, and we're staying on top of this and getting the messaging out on some of the pitfalls we see with some of these pieces of legislation, and just really using this as an opportunity to educate folks on the endowment mission and the importance of that sacred trust, and why these lands came into being. They're managed sustainably for production of natural resources that we manage to produce revenue for our endowment beneficiaries. But again, the land board maintains that public access, that recreation policy, where these lands are open for public recreation and opportunity. And through our recreation program, we continue to try to provide that opportunity to utilize these lands. They're important to Idahoans. They're important to the endowments, and so our folks do an amazing job managing all of this on these endowment assets. So we're staying on top of it, sir.
Governor,
General.
I still think it would be helpful to have the sponsors of these bills come before the land board. I think all these questions that are being asked, or all these issues that are being raised here, I think are very important. And I would like to hear the answer from them. And I know we can all do that one by one, but I think I would like to have the collective wisdom of the board too, because I may have a question that will trigger somebody else's question. And obviously we can't do that in private. So it would be, to me, it would be very helpful to have, because I'm still not sure what their purpose is, what they're trying to solve, what issues do they think that they're solving that we don't currently solve with the land board. I'd like to be a little bit more educated on that. And I think it would be good for us to have a public hearing where they come before the board and answer these questions.
Right.
Governor, I'll just follow up. More bouncing off the Attorney General, but to the director's point, I think some of us met with the cattlemen yesterday, and one of the questions I got while I was meeting with cattlemen was just almost a presumption that if someone asks to buy some of our land, we need to sell it to maximize revenue. And I was trying to, I think this goes to the education piece. Some of these conversations are about that. No, just because someone wants to buy land does not mean that is not necessarily in the best interest of the beneficiaries. And so I think there is just that opportunity, because I do wonder if people don't fully understand. I know you know this well, just what our overall goal is, what the long-term maximization is versus the short-term. And so it's more education about what our role is, not any particular issue. And this is certainly generating those conversations.
Yeah, and Governor, Mr. Secretary, to that point, our position has always been to find ways to lease the property, lease and hold on to that ground, for our endowment purpose. So, very good point.
Governor,
Go ahead.
listening to the conversation, I'll ask a question, I think, that plays off of Secretary McGrain's thought of this. This is active. We're going to continue to talk about it. The land board will continue to be asked, what do you think of this? How do you want to approach something else? Do we have something already? Clearly, the Constitution sets the roles of what the land board commissioners do. Is there something about the overall management that's not a strategic plan, but really is like standards or tenets of how we manage lands? Is there something that's been established that could be used as a template that you put on top of whatever the new proposal is, or something to say, here's what the job of managing lands looks like. Here's your idea. How do these things work together or not? So that we're always referring back to what that standard is, not the people that are in the seat necessarily.
Yeah, Governor and Madam Superintendent, yeah, we have that in a collection of a lot of things, right? From the Admissions Act, the Constitution is very clear. And the Admissions Act says, hey, these lands are granted to the state of Idaho. These are the beneficiaries. You manage these lands to produce income to support these beneficiaries. And the Constitution provides additional clarity, sets up the Board of Land Commissioners to be the trustee for these acres, for these land assets, and to manage those lands in such a way to maximize revenue for the endowment beneficiaries. And then we've got a statute that further helps. The legislature provides legislative intent and direction for additional management and rule, and then land board policy. So it's a collection of laws and policies and constitutional direction that we get our management directives from. I think what's going to help is we have put together some information, just factual information for anyone that wants to see it, why these lands are important. And it goes down the list of, the Admissions Act, the Constitution, and legislative intent for management of these lands. Talks about the revenue generation piece, the access piece, the recreation component. A lot of that is captured in a paper that we've been putting together and working with the land board staff to get into the hands of the legislature and others, just so they're well aware of how these lands are to be managed, and some of the concerns that we see with these constitutional amendments aimed at amending Section 8, Article 9 of the Constitution. And so I don't know if that fully answers your question, Madam Superintendent, but we are staying on top of this and getting that information out there.
Well, just briefly, the draft of the RS in the two RSs concerns me, that takes out prior to 1982, it said maximum return. And then the legislature and the people of Idaho amended the Constitution to put long-term return in. This strikes that. And then it says priority will be given, this is Brad, not some lawyer, it fogs the issue. Maximum long-term return. And the courts have been pretty clear that because when the Constitution was written, it gave great flexibility to the land board. It put sideboards in there. And then, there have been cases brought, and there's a whole volume of case law. And of course, it tears off of the trust doctrine that we are trustees and that the Constitution gives the land board the ultimate authority within getting the maximum return. You take maximum return and maximum long-term return out of it, it really pogs the issue, and it's going to complicate what we do as the land board and what the staff has to do in addressing some of these questions that are there. And I guess I'd like to know what's broken that they want to fix. But I understand the concern about it. And, the legislature has the right under the Constitution to amend the Constitution, and the people ultimately decide.
Yeah. Governor, you're spot on. I'm not sure of what they're attempting to fix either. Couple of things I did leave out, and from our friends in the back, the asset management plan and the statement of investment policy, they're also approved by the board, are two other documents that guide our management and help us meet our trust mandate as well. And the other thing to note is our general counsel, John Richards, has done an analysis on both these bills, and he's well versed in all of this. In case there's additional questions, John can take those on too.
Governor, I guess just to follow up on your comments, I think one of the important things too, just to acknowledge, is we always like to tout how the state-owned land is better managed, healthier forests, and everything else compared to the federal land. How that all the time. A key component of that is because we are harvesting for economic return, and we're managing, like we have capitalism is working to our benefit and to the benefit of healthy forests because we are managing those lands. So there's constantly this balance between trying to raise revenue and just managing healthy forests and providing public access. I think that's part of your point. And so just being able to continue to do that, because if you strip away those capital motivations, it changes things. And we see that with our federal partners who don't have the same mission that we do. And so again, trying to maintain a healthy balance. Everybody here knows as well, we're going to continue to receive more and more pressure for access. There's always been a healthy access to public lands for hunting, fishing, all the other things, but that's just going to continue to grow as the state of Idaho continues to grow.
Governor, one more comment from me on this topic. So in the work, director, that you and the staff are doing of compiling what the duties and roles are and the assignments, is there another list that would be considerations for individuals who are looking at making changes, which we would expect that there will be better ways to do things at some point. But for those that know, what are the considerations that when you're thinking about making changes, here are things to include in a conversation so that we have, as a board, we have something that is roles, duties, what the law says, but also just the experience of what we know.
Yeah, Governor, Madam Superintendent. Yeah, we have gone through a lot of that. Our requirements are very clear. Our mandate is very clear, and I think more folks are learning more and more about that. It's about telling our story, but it's telling that story in a way to ensure, and kind of to the Secretary's point, to ensure that folks know that because of the way we manage, we do have healthier lands generally, healthier forests generally, because we want to let the markets work and ensure that we're producing natural resources on these properties in the best possible fashion, ensuring that we are in a way maximizing revenue because of how we're managing, protecting those resources, and growing good quality products on endowment lands. And yeah, there are considerations. I mean, amending the Constitution is a very, very big deal. And I know we've been talking about that for the last several weeks within the department. This is no simple thing for the legislature to do. But we are working to provide guidance and provide a lot of the background and, the information regarding our management, regarding the requirements in the Admissions Act and what the Constitution also mandates us to do. So we're providing all of this to our legislative friends and our industry partners.
Further questions? Continue.
Okay, Governor, and I think the item that you've all been waiting for is the Resource Protection and Assistance Report. And Shannon Cholette, I'm going to bring Shannon up here to present on this topic briefly.
Governor, Land Board, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Shannon Cholette, and I'm the Division Administrator for MNOG, and I'm here to present the biennial RPA report. The Navigable Waterways Program administers encroachment permits, submerged land leases, easements, and disclaimers of interest. The Nav Waters Program is self-supported through a dedicated account. Instrument activity to the first half of fiscal year 26 is shown in Table 1 on page 1. In the past 6 months, the Land Board approved the pending rule for IDAPA 20-0304 in November of 2025, and the rule will be presented to the 2026 legislature. IDL generated over $500,000 from navigable waterways in the first half of fiscal year 26, and the dedicated fund for the program exceeds $2.5 million as shown in Figure 1 on page 2. Concerning the Regulatory Minerals Program, the Regulatory Minerals Program administers surface mining reclamation plans, dredge and placer permits, and abandoned mineland projects. The Regulatory Minerals Program is supported through a mix of general and dedicated sources. Concerning Perpetual Resources Stibnite Mine in Valley County, IDL approved their cyanidization facility permanent closure plan and the initial 3-year construction phase of the reclamation plan. Mine construction began in October of 2025. Concerning Thompson Creek molybdenum mine in Custer County, Thompson Creek is currently performing pit dewatering in advance of mining, pre-stripping activities to expose to phase 8 ore body, mine fleet overhaul, and mill refurbishing. Mine and mill startup is anticipated for Q2 of 2026. Concerning Integra Resources, De La Mar Mine in Hawaii County, the project is undergoing accelerated NEPA permitting review as part of the Fast 41. IDL is in coordination with federal and state cooperators to review this project. Concerning Liberty Gold Black Pine Mine in Cassia County, the project is undergoing accelerated NEPA permitting review as part of the Fast 41. IDL signed a memo of understanding with cooperators, the U.S. Forest Service, BLM, DEQ, and OEMR. IDL is currently administering about 1,570 mine sites covered by reclamation plans and 28 covered by dredge and placer permits. The mines are presented on Table 2 on page 4 by category, and Table 3 on page 4 has historical plan numbers. Mine operators are eligible to provide bonding through traditional methods or the Bond Assurance Fund. Tables 4 and 5 on page 5 list the acres and bond amounts currently in place for different types of mining operations. Created in 2006, the BAF provides another reclamation bonding option for small operators on private state lands. Table 6 on page 5 has details from the first half of fiscal year 26. BAF billing. Figure 2 on page 6 illustrates the revenue, expenditures, and balance for this fund. The Abandoned Mine Lands or AML program is now funded by receiving 50% of Idaho's mine license tax, a 1% net tax of Idaho's mining industry, excluding sand and gravel. IDL's share of income for the first half of fiscal year 26 is just over $147,000. Table 7 on page 6 lists the projects worked on in the first half of fiscal year 26. Figure 3 on page 7 illustrates the revenue, expenditures, and balances for this fund. I now stand for any questions.
Questions?
Governor.
Controller.
Thank you, Governor. And Shannon and maybe Director. I know Director got several questions yesterday, JFAC, on this, listening into it. Maybe just for clarification, where you were changing some of the FTP for the AML and switching that over to navigable waters, making sure from JFAC's understanding that it's not full FTPs of one individual person, but the percentage of people working on that. Maybe is that just to confirm and clarify that?
Governor, Controller, we're Thank you for that question. Yes, that is correct. It's a net zero fund transfer. We're transferring pieces and parts of 1.5-ish
yeah.
individuals that were being funded through the AML program. Now we're switching them over as their duties are shifting more to a NAV Waters type duties to that NAV Waters fund. This was partially done as HB 226 from 2025 had some spending requirements, like a 90-10% spending requirement. 90% had to be boots on the ground actual projects. So that is to say, if we were to do some projects and we needed to enlist some help from these individuals, we could have them come over and help us for a time and bill to that account. But as it currently sits, they're currently working on NAV Waters projects and they're billing their time to the
Governor,
NAV Waters account.
Go ahead.
follow up. Thank you, Shannon. I guess, where do you see the trend of this fund going based on what you just shared, and where do you see it? Do you see this with continuing the revenue from this and the changing of the FTPs and our friends from the Mining Association paying their part and their dues? Do you see this fund continuing to go up?
Governor, Controller Wolf, another great question. In short, yes, I do. As you could see, reduced spending in that graph, and then this increased revenue. Production is up, at least for this first part of the year. The revenue is already tenfold what it was all of last year. So yeah, I'm excited about the fact, and I hope to continue to see that trend of that fund go upwards.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Director.
Governor, on to the next item, the Endowment Fund Investment Board reports.
Mr. Antone, welcome.
Thank you, Governor. Members of the Land Board, good morning. The endowment had a solid performance during the month of January. The fund had investment gains of 2.6%, which left us up 9.4% fiscal year to date. The markets were closed yesterday, but as of Friday, the portfolio was up 10%. So we've had small additional gains since the end of the month. You know, what's been driving the markets, primarily the fact that inflation's come down, corporate earnings have been very strong, and we're finally starting to see broadening of the markets. As you recall, we've talked a lot about the Magnificent Seven over the last several years as being the primary drivers, but we're finally starting to see small and mid-cap companies improve their performance. And if you look at the second page of our report, you see our small cap managers have really outperformed, particularly Barrow Hanley, who struggled last year. Through yesterday, they're up 55% fiscal year to date. So it's nice to see that. The other thing I think driving the markets is the fact the markets like certainty, and there's been this question of who will replace Jerome Powell as the next chair of the Federal Reserve. President Trump indicated he plans to nominate Kevin Warsh, and I think the markets have recognized this as really an outstanding choice. Mr. Warsh served as Fed governor from 2006 through 2011, which is during the great financial crisis, and was recognized and praised for a lot of the work he did communicating between the Fed and Wall Street. As you know, a lot of the banks had to be restructured during that time frame, and he provided a strong leadership role. Many have thought that he'd bring in someone who would probably just cut interest rates right away. I know the president's interested in interest rates coming down, and that may happen. However, Mr. Warsh has also been really a proponent of controlling inflation during his time on the board. So I think the markets recognize this as a very outstanding choice, a good choice. And he may potentially be able to assume the role as an acting governor earlier because there is an open seat, and then transition to the chair in May. Other than that, I didn't indicate any notes or actions from our board, but I should indicate that last meeting they did approve the addition of a third international equity manager. So we currently have two international equity managers managing 17% of the portfolio. Now those managers are WCM and Schroders. And I believe the perspective was that, you know, that's a lot of allocation to each manager at 8.5%. So we're doing a search for a third international equity manager and hopefully be in a position to announce who we selected in the near future. Governor, with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions?
Governor.
Go ahead, Controller.
Thank you, Governor. I was looking it up here real quick. There was, I think it's House Bill 640 that's been proposed. where it says to divest of foreign adversaries and state managed funds. What type of impact would, if we were to divest of any foreign or global impact of state managed fund, especially from our endowment fund investment board?
Governor, State Controller Wolf. I haven't seen this latest version. I know in prior years there was some draft legislation to that effect. And foreign adversaries included, countries like China, for example. When we did the analysis earlier, we didn't have huge levels of exposure. I think in the report we provided at the end of the last fiscal year, we had close to 30 million in exposure that would be considered invested in countries that are foreign adversaries as defined in the bill. For the most part, our managers are managed using what they call separate accounts, meaning they hold the individual stocks, and we could change our guidelines and our agreements with those managers to exclude those investments. We do have one exception. Dodge & Cox manages a global fund that's a mutual fund, so we couldn't, instruct them to exclude certain positions. So we do mechanically, I guess, have the ability to make those changes should such legislation be enacted. Whether it's in the best interest of the fund and the beneficiaries, that's another question. But I think we would have the ability to, enact that if we're required to.
Thank you.
Governor?
Go
Question?
ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Anton, I noticed some changes in the benchmarks. It looks like maybe from December to January. And I was just curious what those changes are, not completely understanding all of the acronyms and the percentages, just what the changes were and why.
Governor, Superintendent Critchfield. So the primary change, as you know, the governor has asked us to code these performance numbers red or green. Red means the manager or the category has outperformed the benchmark, and red means it's underperformed the benchmark. And the assumption in that is that the portfolio lines up with the benchmark perfectly, and we're really just measuring manager performance. Are they doing better than we would have done had we invested in an index fund? However, for example, on the domestic equity side, we have a large overweight to mid and small cap companies. Part of that is the board elected to have a tactical overweight relative to the benchmark, and that overweight has grown because the large cap stocks have really outperformed mid and small cap stocks. Anyway, the bottom line is our allocation didn't line up with the benchmark, our weightings between large, mid, and small. So starting in December, they said, let's measure this correctly. For domestic equity, let's use the percentages that we have in each of those categories so that we are really tracking how the managers have performed relative to their benchmark. So historically, that's part of why on domestic equity we have that red, is because small and mid cap stocks have underperformed relative to large cap, and we've been overweight there. I know that's a technical answer, and I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yes. If I just have a quick follow-up, I just want to repeat back what I think I'm hearing you say so that then
Yes.
you'll know if I got it or not. What I'm hearing you say is that you haven't changed the benchmarks, but how you report our progress towards the benchmark.
Governor, Superintendent, we haven't changed the benchmarks retroactively. We don't want people to think like we're trying to game the system and make our performance look better. Going forward, starting in December for domestic equity, the benchmark, instead of just being the generic Russell 3000, represents the percents that we hold in large, mid, and small U.S. stocks. So that way we can tell, are they beating the benchmark? Does that make any sense? Because right now we have two variables. We have, are the managers performing, and this tactical overweight to mid and small, is that helping us or hurting us? We're trying to take that out of the equation so that we can, when we present to the land board, we're telling you, are our managers doing their job?
Okay,
I
I'm
know
going to
it's
try one more
complicated.
follow-up.
Yes.
No, I think I'm tracking. So the changes in the benchmarks are to reflect where the accounts are. So it's more specific.
Correct.
Rather than just generally, here's a benchmark, what you're doing is you're breaking it out based on the acronyms and the percentages here to see how we're performing in each of those areas.
Governor, Superintendent, you're exactly correct. We're trying to reflect the actual portfolio as opposed to just a generic benchmark.
I got there. Thank you.
Green is good.
Green is good. I don't like that red. So again, I didn't fix it going backwards, but that's part of why it's been red is we've had this overweight to mid and small and large caps really outperformed with the exception of the last 6 months or so. Thank you. She's doing great. And I think she's helping out today too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor, every time I see Chris, I call him a thief. So I'll probably continue to do that for a little while. So, Governor, on to the consent agenda. Item 3 as a forced legacy conservation easement for the Spirit of Mount Spokane. And this is presented by Jennifer Barker, who is our program manager in the Forced Legacy program.
Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Governor and members of the Land Board. The question before the Land Board today is, shall the Land Board authorize the department to accept the Spirit of Mount Spokane Phase 1 into Idaho's Forest Legacy Program? I'm Jennifer Barker, the Program Manager for the Forest Legacy Program, and thank you for the opportunity to present on this consent agenda item. The Spirit of Mount Spokane Project Phase 1 encompasses approximately 22,352 acres of forest land owned by Inland Empire Paper Company in Bonner and Kootenai counties. Inland Empire Paper Company proposes selling the development rights to these lands to ensure their forests remain intact, productive, and actively managed working forests. The Idaho portion of the Spirit of Mount Spokane project has been awarded $26 million through the Federal Forest Legacy Program. Inland Empire Paper Company will contribute the required 25% non-federal match through the donation of easement value, demonstrating significant private sector investment and partnership. While the original intent was to complete the full 33,977 acre project in a single phase, the appraisal revealed a funding gap attributable to rapidly increasing land values in Bonner and Kootenai counties. Proceeding in phases ensures that substantial conservation benefits are secured now rather than being delayed or lost. Due diligence has been completed on the entire Idaho project. An additional application for federal funding for Phase 2 has been submitted to the U.S. Forest Service, and if awarded, the department will return to request approval to complete the remaining phase once the funding becomes available. Approval of Phase 1 will secure 22,352 acres of unfragmented forest lands. These lands will remain working forests, supporting a stable and reliable saw log and fiber supply, essential to existing industry and future mill investments. Stay on the county tax rolls, preserving local government revenue, prevent conversion to residential development, and limit expansion of the wildland-urban interface, protect water quality and recharge the Spokane Valley Rathrum Prairie Aquifer, and provide free, non-motorized public access for hunting, fishing, hiking, and other outdoor recreation. Motorized use will continue under their existing fee-based program that supports ongoing road maintenance. This balanced approach expands public benefit while preserving the financial resources necessary for responsible land management. As required under the Forest Legacy Program, the property will be managed in perpetuity through a forest stewardship plan. Additionally, Inland Empire Paper Company manages its lands in accordance with the American Tree Farm System certification standards, ensuring long-term forest health, sustainable management, and reduced wildfire risk through active stewardship. The Spirit of Mount Spokane project has received broad support from public and private stakeholders, with letters of support included in Attachment 3. Bonner and Kootenai County were formally updated on the project's progress on November 6, 2025, and to date, the department is not aware of any opposition to the easement. These forest lands possess exceptional conservation, economic, and recreation value for the state of Idaho and for Bonner and Kootenai counties. Approval of Phase 1 represents the opportunity to keep working forests working while securing permanent public benefits for the people of Idaho. For these reasons, the Department of Lands respectfully requests the Land Board approval of Phase 1 of the Spirit of Mount Spokane project. And I will now stand for any questions.
Is there any, I mean, the only reason this is in phases is the magnitude of the issue is to get this project done while we're waiting for more land and water conservation fund for the final phase. Is that correct?
Yeah, Governor and members of the Land Board, that is correct. So the appraisal prices were too high for us to be able to complete the whole project. So we have all the due diligence in place, and as soon as we do have that funding secured, we'll be able to complete a Phase 2.
Okay. Other questions, Controller?
Thank you, Governor and Jennifer. On the what page is this page or attachment 3, it has the list of supporters. You mentioned communicating with Bonner and Kootenai County, and on here you have Kootenai County commissioners have supported that, but I guess any further clarification from the Bonner County commissioners and where they stand?
So we had, sorry, Mr. Governor, Mr. Controller, and members of the land board. We had worked with our project partners and originally had reached out to both Bonner and Kootenai County and received letters of support. And so we did have those on file. And so it might not have made it into yours as it did get updated, but we have a new process.
Thank you.
We have gone to meetings, the commissioner meeting in Bonner County last year. I believe it was in October, and did speak with them to let them know where the project was, and then did provide a formal written update to both Bonner and Kootenai County in the fall.
And then Governor, maybe just to follow up to the governor's question is, what is the time frame do you expect that the funds would be available to go forward with the phase 2 portion?
Mr. Governor, Mr. Controller, members of the land board, we have the application is submitted to the Forest Service. So we will know whether or not that application was successful in a very competitive national funding round, hopefully this spring. And then once those funds become available, we can go ahead and move forward with it. But, it's going to depend. Unfortunately, the appraisal wasn't complete when that funding round moved forward. So we were going with an estimate, and it doesn't look as good as far as when they have too many asks and not enough money, and we don't have a solid number in place. And unfortunately, that was just due to the federal shutdowns and whatnot.
Director, I do think that going back on the agenda, I think it would be good for the legislature to understand, besides the 800 acres we've sold versus the 55,000 acres we purchased, there's another 100,000 acres that has been protected public access through the forest legacy. I think it would be helpful if in the conversations we're having with legislators say, look, this is part of the responsibility of the Department of Lands, and what the land board does in accepting these forest legacy projects adds another 100,000 acres of guaranteed public access and long-term sustainability of the timber industry. I think that would be helpful if they were cognizant of that.
Absolutely, Governor. I think that's another point we can get across easily.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Governor, item 4 is just the draft minutes from the December 2025 meeting.
Governor, I move approval and adoption of the consent agenda.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda has been adopted.
Okay, Governor.
Director.
On to the regular action items, I guess action item. Item 5 is the Abandoned Mine Lands Advisory Committee. So Shannon did such a good job earlier. He's coming back up again to sell you on this one.
Thank you for the introduction, Director. Governor Land Board, good morning, and thank you for yet again another opportunity to speak to you. My name is Shannon Shillette. I'm the Division Administrator for MNOG, and I'm here to ask for the approval of the AML Advisory Committee. House Bill 226 of 2025 amended Chapter 17, Title 47 of Idaho Code to revise funding provisions for abandoned mine reclamation, expand the use of voluntary contributions, establish an advisory committee to assist Idaho Department of Lands and the State Board of Land Commissioners in setting priorities and planning reclamation work. Specifically, Section 47-1706 Idaho Code authorizes the board to establish an abandoned mine or AML advisory committee with members nominated by the governor and approved by the board representing state agencies, local government, conservation interest, and the active mining industry. The committee is intended to provide technical and stakeholder input to support transparent, efficient, and statutorily aligned use of the abandoned mine reclamation fund resources. Approval of the AML Advisory Committee by the Land Board is therefore required to implement the advisory structure authorized by statute and to assist the department in carrying out its responsibilities under amended sections 47-1706 and 47-1707 Idaho Code. Our recommendation is to direct the department to approve the AML Advisory Committee pursuant to sections 47-1706, specifically paragraph 6, Idaho Code. IDL staff recommends approval of the following nominees to serve on the Abandoned Mine Advisory Committee. From DEQ, Dana Swift. From OEMR, Callie Younger. From from Caribou County, Commissioner Bryce Sumpson. Michael Gibson from Trout Unlimited to represent conservation interest. And 3 representatives from industry, John Good from Idaho, Dale Kerner from Integra Resources, and Tyson Klein from Heckler Mining Company. Approval of these appointments will allow the AML, or rather approval of these nominees will allow the AML Advisory Committee to be constituted in accordance with statute and to begin advising the Department of Lands on reclamation priorities and planning. I now stand for any questions.
I do have a question. These, and I don't have an issue with any of them, but are these appointments to the person or to the entity? There's 3 active mines, 1 county commissioner. If there's a new county commissioner, how do we select replacements if Dana leaves DEQ, for instance?
Governor Lamborn.
Is that in the code?
That is, to my knowledge, not in code. So these 7 specific individuals are from areas defined in code, like for instance, DEQ, OEMR, a county commissioner that's with active mining,
I get
et
that.
cetera, et cetera. So the appointment of these individuals, if one of them happens to retire or, win the lottery or whatnot, we would then have to go and appoint a replacement for that.
Who is we?
We would recommend one, and
The land board.
yeah, and the
Okay.
land board would approve that.
So if
Yes, sir.
there's a vacancy, if one of these leaves for whatever reason, it'll come back to the land board.
Governor, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And Governor, you've had no issues with any of these?
Nope, I'm-
Everything's reviewed.
I'm delighted that somebody volunteers to do any of these jobs.
Governor, they're in it for the pay. I swear they are.
Yeah. But they go back to the abandoned, if you look at that, we've only got $1 million. And an abandoned mine, $1 million, and I appreciate what you've done about the funding and the personnel drain on it, but it doesn't take long to consume $1 million. And if we have a big abandoned mine blowout somewhere, we're going to be, it's going to be a challenge to us. It's concerned me for a long time, the trend of the amount of money in the corpus to take care of abandoned mines. And we need to visit with our mining friends, because it's even with that little change, it's still not sustainable if we have a big abandoned mine liability that, and ultimately it's going to be the state that has to pick that up. And we probably ought to look at that on a long-term basis about getting that fund back into a condition to where it would, because if you have something blow out somewhere and you got a critical watershed that's challenged, I don't know what the Triumph mines cost us over the years, but it's enormous.
And Governor, we've been working very closely with the mining industry, talking about a lot of these challenges that we're facing right now, from staffing and funding. And we continue to meet to talk about what the future looks like in terms of our permitting abilities when it comes to, and Shannon mentioned this in his earlier report, the mine permitting work. Stibnite was a lift, especially for IDL, Water Resources, and DEQ, the 3 main agencies involved in the state permitting piece. And there's other projects coming down the pike that we're already involved with. And so I know the industry wants to help to ensure that we've got the resources and the capacity to process these permits. So we've had a series of conversations and more to come on how we really build out this regulatory framework, how we can help streamline more of the permitting to get more of these projects done. And then on the AML side, the advisory board will help us prioritize projects, and hopefully we'll get creative on some other funding opportunities that we can capitalize on to help us meet our statutory obligations to close abandoned mines.
And-
So,
because if we were an insurance company, which in essence we kind of are, if it's a mine on Forest Service ground or even BLM ground, that's one issue. But if it's on state land, ultimately, we need to classify those liabilities predicated on the risk to the taxpayer and the state going forward about, the Midas Perpetua project is on, and they're going through all kinds of hoops to make sure that the downstream, that there's bonding or whatever it might be to pay for it. Of course, if it's an active mine, they've got, but if XYZ company disappears and it shows up on our balance sheet, I think it would be good to continue with the mining industry and with the regulatory entities, say, what do we do about this if something happens?
Governor, with this being on the regular, we need a motion.
yes, sir.
Governor, if
Okay.
the motion's in
All right.
order.
Yes.
I move that we approve the department's recommended names, these 7 for the AML Advisory Committee.
Moved to second. Further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the recommendation will be implemented.
So Governor, I have one last thing here. I mentioned earlier, Chris stealing one of our best and brightest. I will get over this someday, Chris, but I do want to recognize Renee for all the work that she's done for the department. For me, when I started more than 7 years ago now, I can't believe I'm still surviving.
You got a little less hair.
I'm thriving, Governor, right? But Renee was one of the first people I met, and she greeted me with such a big smile. She's always been very welcoming and warm, and I can't say how much I appreciate all that she's done for us. She's very organized, very focused on the details. She works very well under pressure. And trying to corral the entire board is a full-time job. And she always handled all those challenges with grace and patience, and with a high quality work product. So Renee, very much appreciate you. You're going to be missed. It's really sad to see you go, but she's been with us, what was it, over 20 years now, Renee? About 20 years? 18 years. 18 years. However, I will say I have something here for her. She did achieve her 20 years with the state. So this is for you, Renee. And we also have some flowers for you. And so
Oh, very nice.
come up here. And I think Michelle wanted a photo op. Yeah. So Michelle, can you organize this? I don't know what to do with my hands. Here, you hold.
Come in the middle.
Yeah,
You come in the middle.
The star.
Sorry.
You hold that. You hold flowers too.
Beautiful. All right, thank you.
Dustin's lost, Chris has gained, so at least it's a lateral. It's not.
In the family.
So with that, Governor, that concludes the agenda for the day.